Good evening, everyone, and welcome to This Week from Rockdale. And as usual, I am your host, Larry Cox, and we've got a very important show this evening for you all guys to watch. And as usual, when I ask you to do this, would you please share and like this show? Because this show is an important show that everyone in Rockdale County and the surrounding area should hear. Because you're going to hear things on this show that I don't think you're going to hear anywhere else or that you've heard so far. And it's not every day. I think we get an expert like we're going to get tonight that's going to come on and tell us the truth of what's going on with an incident like this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Scott on here right now, do a little introduction, and we'll say to hi some of you in the chat like we always do. Scott, welcome to the show, and I'm so grateful that you were agreed to come on the show tonight to talk to the people in this community.
Yeah, Larry, thanks for reaching out and having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So, Scott, if I can just go in and say hi to a few of my regular people that watch the show, just acknowledge, thank them for watching the show and tuning in tonight. Yoga with Joy. So we've got Joy Power here on the show. Mary Boys with Catherine Lynn, Luca Russo, Cheryl Moulton, James Colbert. We have Josh Allgood. We have Angela Asperino. We have George Kelichek, the Eye of the Taxpayer. We have Sheila Hanna. We have Sherry Thomas. We have Justin Kinney, my good friend Justin Kinney. We have William Campbell, Cheryl Garcia, Danielle Munoz, Stephen Mayo. George Kelichek says CNN, Conyers New Web Network. Thanks, George, for that plug. I wouldn't go that far, but I do. Thanks for the plug there. So, guys, what I want to do now is I'm going to let Scott introduce himself. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's every day that a community like Rockdale gets someone like Scott to come in here and do the things that he's going to do and let us know what's going on. Alex McDonald, thanks for joining. Hey, Scott, Alex is the gentleman that has been doing the drone footage of the area over there, which, if he wouldn't be doing that, we wouldn't be seeing what it looks like and what's going on. So, Alex, thank you for what you've been doing over there. So, guys, what I'd like you to do right now is I'm going to give Scott a second to introduce himself, tell you a little about who he is and what he's done and what drives him to do the work that he does. Scott, take it away.
Oh, by the way, Alex, thank you for what you're doing. Great footage. And Larry, if you would please give Alex my personal contact information, because I'm aware of some things that are probably going to occur in the next few days. And when I try to work with Alex to make sure he gets the footage.
I will do that. I will make sure you guys are in contact.
So a little bit about my background. Anybody can see it on Facebook or, on my X feed. My life and company was wiped out in oil contaminated floodwaters in 2006, about 18 years ago. And I went through, rebuilt the company and, survived it, took care of my employees, ended up getting a Small Business Association Phoenix Award at the Bush White House, and worked with Chuck Schumer. Back in those days, people worked together and it didn't matter what political party, which is the way it should be all the time. So roll forward. I've been in over 60 disasters, starting with my own. I'm an independent testing expert, and East Palestine is really the most relevant disaster as to what just happened in Conyers with BioLab. And I'm going to talk about why. Also, in the process of East Palestine, I became a whistleblower client for the Government Accountability Project. Now, that is a nonprofit. It is not the government. They've done work, with Edward Snowden, 3 Mile Island. They reached out to me. I really want to thank them for the protection they gave me. And people, instead of me talking about it, because we've got so much to cover, Larry, you can go to the Government Accountability Project, Scott Smith, Google that, and you'll see that. But literally, I was vindicated in everything I was saying about East Palestine in a press release on September 30th. That's why this is kind of interesting. Less than 24 hours after the BioLab smoldering, plume happened, everything came out on East Palestine. So I want to talk. We'll get to the what to expect. unfortunately what I call about undue influence, and how the EPA Region 5 was captured by the billion-dollar company in East Palestine. But first, I want to start with I have an expression: you can't find what you don't look for. For example, you've got the EPA saying the ash and the soot is safe, there's no asbestos. Well, we know there's no asbestos in it, and I brought some home. I've tested between 12 and 15 properties, and I'll be headed back soon. But if you can see that, that's polystyrene. And when polystyrene burns, there are products of incomplete combustion, and that's where the dioxins come in. And to put this into perspective, East Palestine, everybody knows about that train derailment. About 2 million pounds of chlorine compounds burned in biolab Conyers. I never thought I'd be saying this or see another event so soon. We know at least 12 million pounds of chlorine compounds burned. That makes this impact potentially 6 times greater than East Palestine. And, I'm still learning, but I'm very clear. If I know something, I'll say what I know. If I don't know, I'll try to get an answer for the community. But I've been, the 12 to 15 sites I've been to close to ground zero in some of those, and 2 of the businesses. And I've sampled next to a dead frog within 1,500 feet of ground zero at the retaining pond. And I bet out approximately about 30 miles. And I have seen as far as 30 miles with my own eyes and picked up with my own hands the soot and the ash that has fallen from the sky. So that's kind of a kind of broad overview of why what everything we learned in East Palestine is very relevant here. But we also, and I'm just learning, I have a great scientific team around me. I have access to toxicologists, and the team around me has over 200 years of collective experience in this. So as I do the testing data, just my role is I'm kind of the guy on the front lines that goes out in the public, and I take all the incoming missiles and the smears, but I'm built for it and I'm ready for it. And the team behind me, we review the results. I meet with them before I talk about the detailed results. So,
well, Scott, you and I both know if people could not have us do this show tonight, we wouldn't be doing the show tonight.
Absolutely.
Because and that's what I've talked about here recently, about other things that have occurred, the importance of independent local media. And that's what I refer to guys like me. We are, I mean, we're not mainstream media. We're not, but myself, Alex, a few other people in this community. And I've been doing this type show for since 2018 now. Right. And people have built trust in it because, we don't make things up. This is what it is. This is what happened. And people can't buy us and get to us. And with talking with you today, that was what, and I've done a little research and talked to a few people. And that's what I found out about you is Scott can't be bought and he can't be influenced. So that was why I felt comfortable having you come on the show tonight.
Well, thanks. And, I'm stubborn to a fault. So I wouldn't make a very good politician because I tell the truth and I'm stubborn and I'll call it like I see it. And what you see here is you've already started, you got to watch for the narrative. You're going to see it's ubiquitous in the environment. Well, there were 3 fires in the last 7 years, and I don't think anybody ever tested. Let's talk about dioxins and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. I know that's a mouthful, but these are products of incomplete combustion. And when you have that smoldering burn over a period of time, and you have chlorine compounds, and you're mixing them with polystyrene roof compounds and other compounds, you're going to create these products of incomplete combustion, which are very dangerous and cancer causing. But the good news is, if we test for these spectrum of chemicals, we can get information to what people may have been exposed to, what their pets have been exposed to, what their families have been exposed to, what's in their soil, what's on their windshields, what's possibly in their gardens, and we can get answers for them so things can be remediated and they can seek medical help. So I want to be very clear. This is not about what what I'm doing is trying to give people a peace of mind. There's no need to be scared. And like what I've learned in East Palestine, the only thing that the communities end up fearing, they know when they're being gaslit. And I can tell you in East Palestine, EPA Region 5 came in, and these contractors that aren't independent literally came in on behalf of Norfolk Southern and told people, oh, you're allergic to your perfume. Oh, it's psychosomatic. Oh, it's PTSD. And these are people that didn't have any health symptoms before the event. And, you know, there is a following of East Palestine residents, and some of them are on here tonight, and you can see them on the various Facebook pages. I'd encourage you to reach out to them. But the asthma-like symptoms, I've seen pictures of like rashes, people's scalps, the burning when you're breathing. Those were all happening in East Palestine and have residual effects. There were also a lot of problems in East Palestine with female menstrual cycles and a whole host of issues related to that. What I'm trying to do is just let people know in this initial call with you as to what kind of symptoms they should be on the lookout for. And there's also something you're going to see. You're going to see the EPA. You're going to see the contractors from, you know, the corporate, you know, the contractors for, I think it's KIK Products or Biolab. Is that correct, Larry?
That is correct, yes.
So they've already hired their crisis PR firm. So you're going to see the smears and attacks for anybody trying to get to the truth, which is fine. I wear smears with a badge of honor, and I'm sure you do too, Larry.
Yeah, you know, and this thing about it, I've got credibility in my community, and my community is going to believe me over a PR firm.
That's right. So the PR firm's calling all the shots. Let there be no doubt about it. And what you're going to hear is things were ubiquitous in the environment. There's nothing to see here. And a lot of times, and I can tell you in East Palestine, first of all, when I go into a community, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I will reach out to EPA Region 4 like I reached out to EPA Region 5. I tried to sit down with them in reciprocity and share data. They chose to launch a PR smear campaign on me that didn't work out too well for them. You can read about that in the Government Accountability Project. But I give everyone a chance, including the elected officials. But unfortunately, in East Palestine, the fire chief, the police force, they're very good, these billion-dollar companies using their PR firms to try to divide a community. Don't let your community get divided. Watch, you know, ask questions. Don't assume someone's guilty, but ask questions and watch the behavior of your fire chief, of the police chief, of the mayor, of the commissioner, and just ask questions. Because I always give people the benefit of the doubt, but you should be asking the tough questions, and you should also follow the money, because there's two principles you're going to see. You can't find what you don't look for. If you don't look for the dioxins, and if you don't look for these products of incomplete combustion, you can't find them. That's a fact. And the other thing that never lies, follow the money. Follow the money. And therein lies the questions of how did this happen? I saw the testimony and the tragic passing away of, I believe his name was Kenny Johnson. He was jumping up and down about this, I think, since the last few incidents. And the questions need to be asked, you know, why were no safety precautions taken? And how did this happen? And the appropriate people hopefully will be held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, I mean, and a lot of people are here scared, right? Because, and there's a few people that have already been in the chat talking about them being sick, their kids being sick. They had called 911. And this is the thing about it. No one here has actually been told what was leaked into the atmosphere, what's been leaked into the water. So is there anything for sure that you can tell us that you know that has been leaked into the atmosphere or the ground?
Well, we know there was a plume. We know there was, I believe they've already admitted, they being, I think, the EPA and or the company, you know, phosgene, chlorine gas, They haven't admitted anything else. And one thing, unfortunately, the easiest testing to game is the air testing. Air testing, by definition, is erratic, and they can play games and declare a false non-detect. So, and I use one of the best labs in the country, Eurofins Labs, and it's all being processed in Pennsylvania. And the results usually take up to 4 weeks. And I can promise you, when I get my results, you will be the first phone call, and I'll come back on this show, and I'm going to try to get down there to have a public town hall. And I'm going to try to get back this week and try to get some more samples from the area.
Yeah, and we can definitely arrange a public town hall for you and a location and all that. Uh, we can make that happen, and then and definitely back on the show to let everybody know what's going on, and and what we need and what they need to know. So we do know the chlorine, right? So
yeah, I want to mention too. I see some people from East Palestine. So when I say East Palestine, that's on the border of Pennsylvania, and the plume really deposited the toxic plume from East Palestine to the north and the northeast. Yeah, it cycled around. It deposited in other areas. So, and I also saw one of the maps after this. I think the initial plume in Conyers went north or northeast.
it did.
But I do think it actually swirled around too. So Larry, I was just looking at
yeah, and one of there were three different colors in the flame. Uh, do those colors signify anything? Like the orange and the red and
well, yeah, yes, they do, and we don't have specific answers on that yet. But one of the things there, and Kenny Johnson was talking about methyl isobutyl ketone (MIBK). Why that was there, we don't understand right now. We don't know how much, but you have a very dangerous combination of some very lethal, deadly chemicals that we're burning. And I would suspect that you get those different colors from the different combinations. And I just learned an hour ago from somebody on my scientific team that apparently lithium carbonate was on site. And we don't have an answer as to why that was. I mean, lithium carbonate, I believe, is used in EV batteries and things like that. So we don't have the full list of all the chemicals. All we know is that at this point, at least 12 million pounds of chlorine compounds were there, and we know that the building was polystyrene foam. Nothing good comes when you start burning these products and mixing them together.
well, and would I be mistaken to say that foam, that whatever chemicals were there, they got into that foam?
Yeah, not only got into the foam, but burned with the foam.
And that made it even more. And there's an interesting question from Valerie Koning right here. She's a cancer patient, and her and her husband teach here in Rockdale, and they left on a trip to Iowa. And she said she lives within 3 miles of BioLab and is concerned about coming home because her body already, with chemo and stuff. I mean, Scott, what would you recommend? I mean,
everyone's situation is different, but if I myself or someone in my family was immunocompromised and I could afford it, if I had family, I'd probably stay away. And again, I'm not trying to scare anybody but I just know, and again, on the ground last week, just to put this into context, and I go into these events because I had my own disaster 18 years ago, and I'm trying to help communities not have to go through what I went through. So I can tell you in East Palestine, I never had bloody noses, had my nose cauterized. I've had other issues. They've gone away. But one of the things when I was on the ground last week, it's that feeling almost like you're drunk, ready to pass out, and the burning of the lungs. I felt I felt a more intense harshness than I felt in East Palestine.
I went. My office is right across the road, also, and we went in this past Monday, and something happened, and they evacuated everybody, and I was there for a little over an hour, and I did not feel well for a day and a half, Scott. For a day and a half, I mean, and I had just sort of a feeling in my lungs, and I was sort of foggy, right? For a day and a half, I did not feel right. So I get what you're talking about, and I had never experienced And the smell that I smelt that day was not the same as the chlorine smell. Just so you know,
Yeah.
it was a different smell that day that I smelled.
Yeah, no, and I definitely, I think I'm past it now, but I slept most of the day yesterday, and that's not normal for me. But it's clearly and I had a respirator on almost all the time when I was close, so that tells me even when I didn't have the respirator on, there's clearly something in the air there. But to go back, if you are immunocompromised, I would take an abundance of caution. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the luxury, family close by, or can't afford to move. And for those that want to, that's unfortunate. Now, hopefully, maybe the company is going to set something up to relocate people. I don't know. This is still early on.
Yeah, it's too early to determine, and I don't know either. And I think I had heard that there was supposed to be some sort of announcement Monday that BioLab and the government were going to make. So I think we'll find out Monday if whatever a statement, uh,
Oh, so
somebody has did Oz shut down Black Lawn Road to hurt Larry Cox's business? Just stay out of. Nah, I don't think he did that. Just to hurt my businesses. I'm gonna just let everybody know. I rebounded. I was able to I had enough equipment that was not in there, and we have been now. It's been difficult. I've got probably $500,000 worth of inventory in that warehouse, but we were able to rent two other facilities, and we are operating. So they were not able to. That was not anything that would have been able to harm my business. So I mean, it could have, Scott, but I mean, I know how to pivot, right?
yes,
So I pivoted, but there's a lot of people who can't pivot, right? And this is devastating them. But I'm also told people this: I will never operate in that building again. I am not going back to that building. All the water, stormwater drainage from BioLab comes to that property. It goes under the building. There's a retainage area there. The main storm drain is there on the property, and behind the building is one of the storm drain little canals that goes to the retention pond that you tested. So I mean, I personally think that property is contaminated beyond whatever for a long time, and you may can speak on that, but that's just my personal assessment.
yeah. There's Unfortunately, you're probably 60 to 70% correct, but we'll be able to find out definitively by doing proper, thorough, independent testing. And I also want to encourage everybody listening to, if you can, put in Ziploc bags any soot or ash in your yard. Um, do not assume that it's safe. Do not touch it with your bare hands. Uh, and don't let kids or pets go anywhere near it. Also, if you have deposits on your windshields, on the sides of your homes, try to leave some of it because that is evidence, and also soil. Uh, I've had pictures come to me privately from people of some dead chickens that are very concerning, and some produce and crops in the garden that are already suspicious looking. So there's a whole host of issues. And again, this is very early on, and it's about preserving the evidence at this point. And the other thing you're going to see is a lot of doctors don't know how to look at this. And I reached out to Dr. Beatrice Gullum from the Gullum Research Group, and I worked with her in East Palestine. She actually helped our vets, the vets in the Gulf War from the burn pits. This is the East Palestine, and now BioLab and Conyers are like burn pits. Well, our government dismissed the vets. It's in your head, and she was able to help them and diagnose and help them understand why they were getting sick. And one of the things you're going to see, I think you've already seen, you will see the EPA, you will see the PR firm for BioLabs and KIK say they'll cite a singular exposure to a singular chemical. That means, like, if you're only exposed to benzene, that you're under that exposure. Well, there's something called synergistic toxicity. There are no standards for mixtures of chemicals, and this is coming up over and over again. I'm going to continue to try to post to the Facebook pages for this event, and to your page, news coverage in a town hall that I did with Chris Cuomo and News Nation that explains all this, because East Palestine is very relevant to what's going on right now, especially when it comes to mixtures of chemicals. And there are no standards for mixtures of chemicals. And the way I explain synergistic toxicity is, everyone's familiar with migraines. You take the aspirin and the caffeine. I know when I had migraines, that helped with me. Well, if you take just aspirin or just caffeine, it doesn't solve the migraine. That's called synergistic in a good way. But when you have low levels of dioxins, of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and all these other things, they may be under the threshold that is considered acceptable for a singular exposure to a singular chemical. And that's a clever little game that gets played with the PR firms.
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, somebody asked just now, Scott, and I think it was, um, so they were talking about their livestock and feeding their livestock and grazing and stuff. And, you can't a lot of times take the livestock out. I mean, you can't move them. I know one lady who moved some horses and stuff, but I mean, did we, I know in that part of Pennsylvania and Ohio, there were farms and stuff that were probably impacted. What happened to those farms and that livestock up there?
Well, I can tell you the EPA worked with the Norfolk Southern, and their not so independent contractors declared everything safe. I had actually tested independently some garlic and garden crops and found some concerning levels. They declared everything safe without ever testing anything. That you can't find what you don't look for. You're going to hear me say that over and over again. And it's all about creating the right narrative. And also, I was the one that uncovered, as a whistleblower, EPA Region 5. EPA was covering up data that didn't fit the nothing to see here narrative. And now I also want to get into this, we're covering a lot of ground here. The plaintiffs' class action attorneys actually silenced their own expert, Stephen Petty. And you'll see in some of the news announcement about me being vindicated, Stephen Petty, the plaintiff's expert, came out in support of me in a sworn declaration. And I signed a sworn declaration too, with 629 pages of exhibits that lays out exactly how the EPA hid and manipulated data, withheld it. And that's why some of these plaintiffs' class action attorneys talked one way in Ohio and made these promises, and then they silenced their own expert when the settlement came. So everyone needs to be very careful when you're talking to these settlement class actions attorneys, because what we saw in East Palestine, the narrative changed, and the settlement class action attorneys ended up hiring their own PR firm to go after people like me. That's really true. And it's everything I'm saying. If anybody wants to see the details, they can go to the Government Accountability Project website. And I think for the best thing the residents can do is what I say, it's the system. What happened in East Palestine is the PR. There's a reason these big companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on public relations, because it can usually work to fool people. And the system, I tell everybody, the system we have with the court system and the judge, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican, a Democrat, that we got a problem with the system, Larry. That's why independent media like yourself, like News Nation, like Chris Cuomo, Rich McHugh, like, Status Quo, there's a whole host of great independent journalists that are really becoming the mainstream media. What you got to be careful for, a lot of the national so-called mainstream media are nothing but public relations people posing as media that completely worship and believe anything that the government says or anything coming out of the billion-dollar company, because the revolving door of the PR people. And I also want to add, I was subpoenaed in my driveway and threatened by Norfolk Southern, and the person that did it was an ex-EPA attorney that was sold out and working for the railroad. So, like you, Larry, I don't get intimidated. They picked the wrong guy. So
Yeah, no, 100%, right? I mean, it's you can't let people push you around, right? If you do, then you're allowing this kind of nonsense to just continue. And this is what I want to know, and I know your testing is going to show it. You're gonna find out what we were exposed to, and we're gonna be able to know, by knowing what we were exposed to, what the possible health hazards are, short term and long term. Well, let's just say, for now, we know the chlorine for sure, correct? What are
yes.
the short term and long term possible health issues with that, and what it did, and what radius do we think that's from that plant? What radius do we really need to be concerned about?
So first of all, I wish again, I don't know enough at this point to be able to answer that with any accuracy. But over the next 4 weeks, when I get results in and I share them with toxicologists that I trust, we'll be able to start getting those answers. I said, if I know something, I'll always say it. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know, but I'm going to get you the answers as soon as I can and go to the right experts.
So I see, James, you said you were in East Palestine and you were symptomatic for a month from the contamination. So James, I mean, that's a good indicator. So, and James, how far away were you? If you'll put that in the chat, just so we know how far you were away from the derailment, that we know, give the residents here a little bit of indication. So, but you'll be able to answer a lot more questions once you get test results, right?
Yeah, and I want to say Judith just said the scariest words in the English language from the government, and I'm here to help you. You're right, Judith. And basically, what I've seen in East Palestine and in the last 18 years and all these disasters I'm from the government, and I'm here to sell you out because I'm now working for the multi-billion-dollar company. That's exactly what goes on, and that's the playbook. But what I'm optimistic, we are getting enough public traction here and bringing residents from all walks of life across the country together. And there's power in thousands of us coming together that's going to turn into millions to finally change the system and expose all this corruption.
So our good friend Justin asked a question. I know you were going to talk about this. And you told me earlier, you said you've got to treat this as a crime scene and you got to preserve evidence. And that's what Justin just asked. How do they preserve the evidence? Like the filters from their cars, from their houses, and what other things do they need to preserve that would possibly contaminated, Scott?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the soil and the chemicals I'm looking for, unfortunately, don't dissipate or go away anytime soon. So, the soil, I get and test the soil, but as far as air filters in your car, furnace filters, air conditioning filters, pull them out, seal them up in a plastic bag, double seal it, and save it and preserve it. And if you've got deposits on your windshield, there's a special protocol I use from the lab with hexane infused wipes. But for those of you that have to clean your windshields, take a paper towel and put it in a Ziploc bag. That's the best you can do, and then preserve that, because that is evidence that will need to be tested.
Okay. So, and Jennifer asked, any suggestions regarding to potential damage to roofs or car paint?
Well, some of what I saw when I was testing the other day, and I was you've seen Chris Lovejoy on the news and Service Pro, and I was swabbing his vehicles, and they were turning, you could clearly see like almost an acid impact. And I'm hearing a lot of things about an acid mist, a foggy mist that you can see in the morning sometimes. So, and there's, And I've also heard stories where paint is just literally being peeled off vehicles. And that would make sense with the kind of chemicals that were involved.
There was one business owner who he was probably a mile and a half away, Scott, and he had a galvanized brand new chain in the corner of his office, and that brand new galvanized chain is now rusted.
Wow. And there were people that couldn't get in their locks just, disintegrated.
Yes, disintegrated. Yeah, and then and he had told me because he said, yeah, I had a brand new chain that I just got the week before, and it was over in the corner, and he said, and you don't, and that it's rusted. The whole thing is rusted.
Now, it hasn't rained much since the event.
It
Am I
hasn't rained
correct?
at all.
Okay, if there's a heavy downpour rain, people really need to be careful with the storm drains and the connection to the waterways. And I've got to learn more. I'll be in touch after this, so I'll study some maps. I think there's there's a river called the Yellow River, because if I'm concerned if when there inevitably will be a heavy rainstorm.
Yes.
So whatever's down there in the drains is going to spread.
Well, and I'll just tell you, before they built that building, our property didn't flood. But after they built that building, and every time there's a heavy rain now, our parking lot floods because it can't handle all the runoff from over there. So it's not good. So when it comes to heavy rain, trust me, we will know. So Judah says they're apparently corrosive chemicals.
Yeah. It's
So,
my understanding. It's effectively like it's like you're seeing very intense acid rain and acid fog, pretty much.
yes.
I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, I felt like I was in one of those Stephen King movies when I was there last week.
You're right. I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, that was the weird. I've never felt the way I felt after last Monday, and it was crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, and people spitting up blood and passing out, and it's
And Alex has got a question. This we've all wondered is what happens if it rains significantly before they're finished the cleanup over there, Scott?
I have got concerns about that. We don't know. I mean, with everything in the open air, I mean, we know the water is probably going to set off more reactions, and we still don't know the full extent of what chemicals they had on site. I saw somewhere where they're claiming something proprietary, but this appears to be a complete breakdown in regulation at the state and the federal level. How this happened is beyond comprehension, especially with 3 fires in the last 7 years.
Well, and I read something also that the plant that they burned down in Louisiana in 20, that they were cited for the wrong suppression system. So apparently they had another water suppression system with chemicals that are not supposed to react. I mean, have a reaction, be around water. So is that a common thing in the industry, Scott, for these companies to have the wrong suppression system for chemicals that they're storing in warehouses?
I always knew I was involved in the manufacturing business for a lot of years and went through rigorous insurance inspections and state inspections. So from my experience, it was always quite obvious, and you were going to get in a lot of trouble and have a lot of fines if you had the wrong fire suppression system.
So I mean, it would just with me. I mean, I'm in the construction industry, and we have to get. I mean, we have hazards that we work with, right? So part of our thing that we have to familiarize ourselves with is this: that we have to have the right fire extinguishers for the chemicals that we're going to have, because different chemicals require different different type of suppressants. So we have to have the right fire extinguisher if we would have an incident with whatever we have. So it would seem similar to me. If you're going to store X chemicals in a warehouse, you have to have the right suppression system. So, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, just me logically thinking.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well said. It's an absolute no-brainer.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very concerned about it, and I think a lot of residents are concerned. You know, when the fire department also fought the fire with water, and I think a lot of us believe that may have made the situation a lot worse because those chemicals were, the fire was fought the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, I just read here, so I read it in one of the chats too. It's that the 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 town wanted them to use water sprinkler, wet water sprinklers because it would have been a violation of code. I mean that's going to be interesting paperwork to review at some point.
It will be interesting paperwork to review, and if someone directed you to use a suppressant system that would not extinguish the chemicals that were there if they got on fire. That's I would, yeah, I want to read that also and see what there. So Scott, I mean, we look at this. I mean, if you would have to put this incident, because it seems to me there are a lot of similarities with East Palestine and Conyers, with the chemicals and the fire and the leak. So if you have to compare these two incidents, and I understand that you can look at East Palestine and that's a, a big environmental issue right now, right? I mean that's it's not set, still not all settled, right?
Well, there's a settlement that was done with the plaintiff's attorneys, and yeah, but you know, it's a big point of friction within the community, and the plaintiff's attorneys did a very good public relations job. Uh, these plaintiff's attorneys represented one thing when they signed people up. They hired this expert Stephen Petty, and then they claim there's nothing to see here in trying to get people to settle, but they will not release their own experts. These are their clients' experts. So that's what I'm saying. Be very careful on these plaintiffs' attorneys, because in East Palestine, these same plaintiffs' attorneys are on the ground advertising and trying to sign people up. These are the same plaintiffs' attorneys that withheld their own experts' report, and they tried to get people to settle based on nothing to see here. So if there's nothing to see here, why didn't they release Stephen Petty's expert reports? So that's very relevant to what you're going to see unfold here in Conyers. And when I talk about the system, you got to be careful about complicit judges. And one of the most important things, believe it or not, is the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion is very important, and you can win in the court of public opinion by bringing people together. And when these class action attorneys start filing, find out who the judge is, peaceful, email the judge, make your voices known about if you see anything inappropriate or you feel that your attorneys are selling you out, because judges listens to the court of public opinion and the media like yourself. Very important.
Well, I'm everybody knows that I have, they have a business over there, and we have acquired counsel. And one of the things that we did when our business looked at this is we did not want to be, I'm just going to say it, don't mind, we did not want to be involved in a class action suit. We wanted our case to be represented individually. So we looked for a group of lawyers that were not going to file, and they said some of the cases may be class action because there's you don't have a direct real a claim, right? You can't show personal loss, business loss. They said, but cases like our business and all those businesses that are in that proximity that all got shut down, they point blank said that they don't feel that any of those should file a class action because they would be better suited in individual suits. And I agreed with that after listening to the logic. And then I actually got some counsel from some other attorneys who don't do that type of litigation, but advised us not to do a class action because it would not suit our case well. because they felt we would be better off with an individual suit. And they said, you're better off if you're going to find an attorney or a group of attorneys that are going to file multiple individual suits, and there's power in that. So that's the route that
Exactly.
we
Well,
decided to take.
I couldn't have said it any better, Larry. That's exactly right. Class actions may make sense for those people that don't have provable damages. They're not having any medical issues. They don't have soot and ash raining from the sky, invading their airspace, and they within the radius. But for people with real damages, especially medical, in East Palestine, not to use a bad pun, but they did a good job with the plaintiff's attorneys railroading with the railroad people into settling and signing things away. And they didn't leave people with many options.
And what I was told also, Scott, is that that even the claims that are not going to be class action, the individual, they are not going to file them in Rockdale County, is what I heard, because of political. You know what I mean? And that they would most likely be filed in a neighboring county. And I was told there's a way they can do that, and it's whatever. But I was told that the cases for the individuals would be filed in a neighboring county.
Yeah, there's all that. I mean, every state's different. There's state court, there's federal court. In Ohio, it was the class action was consolidated in federal court. So every state is different.
Yeah, and our attorney said they don't want it in federal court, and they believe that we'll be able to keep it out of federal court and keep it in the state court, and that is the best course of action for individuals that we want to do these cases, is to keep it out of federal court, keep it in the Georgia state court system, and they said they will be able to do that. And there's a few legal maneuverings that they'll know how to do that. And I feel very confident in the individuals that we hired. And if anybody wants to reach out and ask me who that I've hired, I will no problem tell you who I hired. I feel very confident in the legal team that I have, because that's the first thing they told me is they didn't want to do a class action. They wanted to represent us individually, would like to have a large group of us, but they felt that they would be able to do a better job with their clients if they represented us individually and not a class action. And I'd already knew that was something that we should be looking for from friends of mine who were attorneys that advised me. So when they said that, I actually got a good comfort feel with that before I did even more discussing with them in conversation.
That's great that you did that. It was a good move.
So with this being such a similar incident, do you feel that the incident in Conyers is, I mean, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but the magnitude with the amount of chemicals compared to there to here, after the testing is done, should somebody be sitting in their seat and holding on when we talk the next time?
I don't know. We know the magnitude of chemicals. The chlorine compounds were 6 times that of East Palestine, from everything I know. But what we don't know is when they burned and all these products of incomplete combustion, we don't know where they're deposited. Are they mostly deposited within 1 mile, within 2 mile? And we know up to 30 miles away, soot and ash were being deposited. How harmful is the soot and ash? It doesn't look good, but we won't know that impact. That's why I keep saying thorough, independent testing, not this, we only looked for asbestos. Again, you can't find what you don't look for, and we're looking for everything. That's the only way.
So your testing is a broad spectrum.
Correct.
So you're going to do such a broad spectrum that if there is something to be found, it'll be found.
Yes, and again, the caveat there is we still don't have a complete list. We know there's 12 million pounds, at least 12 million pounds of chlorine compounds. We don't have a complete list of what was on site, so we still don't know.
So, and that's you're just talking about one compound that you know. So we don't know of the other compounds.
That's
So,
correct. What
so
we do
that's
know
what.
when all these compound mix, they create again products of incomplete combustion, and we're looking for the full spectrum to the best of our ability of the products of incomplete combustion.
And that is such an unknown factor that that's why this testing out in these different zones is so important, like you're talking about, so that we actually can get an indicator of how far out the contamination may go and to what extent the
Correct.
contamination is.
Correct.
So I mean, so we're still, even though we're still in a severe unknown, uh, but I think we know a lot more than we did know, that there is need to be concerned, that there is likely contamination. How much we don't know, how severe we don't know, but with testing, we will get definitive answers.
We will. And also, I want to emphasize those with your family, your children, your pets. Anything is off, go get it documented. Go see the vet, go see the doctor. Keep going every day if you have to. If you see a new sign, document, document, document.
So Alex just put something up just now. He said there were 12.5 million pounds in '04, and this fire was much bigger than the '04 fire. So one of the things that we had heard, Scott, was, you had Hurricane Helene, right? And
Yes.
they had a lot of things shipped in to get them under cover before, all the rain and the storm, and that warehouse may have been over capacity because of storing more than they should have, because of trying to get everything out of weather. So that is some speculation, right?
Yeah. Also, there's a lot of marketing information about KIK products that I just learned tonight. I haven't seen it with my own eyes yet about, COVID, and, they really ramped up from 2020 on. So that might explain, we don't know what they really were making in there. I think they're claiming some proprietary information on some things. And that's why these chemicals like the lithium carbonate and the other chemicals, they don't make a lot of sense right now, but we really don't know what they were doing in that building.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start claiming proprietary, that means you don't want people to know what it was. I mean, and it could be because of what you talked about, that mix factor, right? You had what we do know and what we don't know, and when they mix, it might be a no-no.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mixtures it's all the dangerous thing here are the mixtures, especially when you have smoldering burns, incomplete combustion.
And that's what we have. And Scott, and so what we've been told, and does this sound accurate to you? That what's happened is with the cleanup, and when they hit pockets of this stuff, that were get outgassing has occurred, and that's causing additional plumes. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, and we are suspicious. We being me and the scientific team, what's really going on at night.
Well, I was told by one of my sources, very reliable source, right? Extremely reliable, that 75% of the cleanup they've been able to do, there's 25% remaining, and that remaining is very difficult to get to because of the debris. And they expect to cause another large plume in the near future because of how that other debris is lodged around the other chemicals. So, I mean, this is a very reliable source saying
I
that.
I heard the same thing this afternoon, so the same exact thing.
I mean, I'm going to tell you, my source, Scott, 100%, right? Just
I believe you. I can tell. I believe you. So that's something to be on the lookout for.
so I'm concerned about, what that means. I mean, whatever happened last Monday freaked them out, because when anybody was in there, they went door to door in their, in their hazmat suit. I mean, they went they freaked out, Scott, getting everybody out of that area. So whatever happened, and they're not telling us, you know that. Whatever happened last Monday, it even scared them, and you could tell. So, I mean, got to be concerning when that happens, right?
Very much so.
So, we have also heard, Scott, that BioLab is actually doing the testing and reporting it to the government entities. What are your sources telling you?
It's the same playbook, and it's the same thing that we saw in East Palestine. The responsible party does all the testing, and then the government signs off on it, and that's just simply not acceptable. So the way I compare this, easy to understand, is I'm driving on the road in Georgia in Conyers. I'm clearly drunk, swerving all over the place. I get pulled over by the Conyers police. I say I work at BioLab, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry for pulling you over, sir. We're going to let you go do your own blood test." What do you think that blood test is going to say?
It's going to say I'm fine and dandy.
And yeah, exactly.
So yeah, there was an interesting question I was wondering here. So,
and again, if you want to see what happened in East Palestine, just go to my sworn declaration on the Government Accountability Project. 629 pages of exhibits. You can read every word, and you can see what happened in East Palestine with the EPA.
So some people want to know, where do you think the product is being taken to that they're from their I mean, where are they relocating the product?
Great question, and it's something we need to figure out. We should be able to somehow get that either under Freedom of Information, and the EPA should have that. So
I mean, because I'm concerned about that. I mean, are these in trucks that are allowed to breathe, not breathe?
Yeah.
I mean, are they causing, or could they be bombs because they're not being?
Where are the trucks going? Where are the landfills? Because leaching landfills are an issue. Where's all the debris? Where's it all being dumped? Those questions need to be answered. It's very important.
I mean, and that's what we all want to know. I mean, what's going on with this? I mean, and did this similar thing happen in East Palestine? Were the people kept in the dark, not given any information? Did you have a business area that was kept away from their businesses for weeks? And I was told Friday, again by this very reliable source, it would probably be at least 2 more weeks before anybody would be allowed over there to be.
In East Palestine, there was an evacuation, and then they let after they did the controlled burn, they let everybody back. So East Palestine, it appears to me that Conyers so far is at least they're raising more flags. They know something's really bad, but they're not going all the way and evacuating this shelter in place at night. And I believe it may turn out that everyone should have been evacuated at BioLab's expense, but the big companies never want to do that.
So this is something also somebody just asked, and that. So you've been there to Ground Zero. So you were over on Black Lawn, and I think you went down Olympic Court too. If you went and did that thing,
yes.
So people are asking, should Black Lawn and Olympic be closed for good?
That's a good question. We don't know. I mean, we don't know how contaminated it is. We don't know. We need to find out what exactly the contaminants, how bad it is, and then that determination can be made.
So, I mean, I've already told, and I'm not making it a secret out there, I will never go back and operate on the property that I was on. I won't. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable directing employees to work there, Scott. And we are going to go retrieve our stuff. We'll be dressed properly. We're going to do this right. Limited time periods, not spend a lot of time at one time they're doing it. It's going to be overtime, getting things, limited exposure, right? But I will never work there full time, and I will never have an operational business at that property again because I just don't trust it. And that's me, right? but I know there's a lot of other people who own property and businesses there, and they're probably going to feel. I mean, they're going to have to operate there again, right? And but it also could come down to it, and I'm not saying this, but if the right testing and stuff is done, somebody may come say, "Well, you can't open back up." That could be said, couldn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it could.
I mean, that's not out of the realm if the right testing is done and the samples come back ABC, then it could be said this this ground in this area is too contaminated, and it may be 6 months, it may be a year before they say that the toxic the levels have gone down. And that's another thing that bothers us too, uh, uh, because they keep saying, "Well, the levels," and we're like, "What levels?" Right? I mean, what are the levels that we're talking about that they don't want us to be exposed to? Shouldn't we be aware of what levels they're concerned about, Scott?
Absolutely. They're supposed to reveal that.
And they've not told us what the level. Just the levels are too high. So, what is it that you're afraid of me being exposed to? What are the levels? Right? And
Yeah.
and they initially said this. They initially said that there was no danger, right? And then they had to, then it was like, well, it's either too dangerous to be there or you don't want us there because you don't want us in the way of the cleanup. Then they finally had to say it was too dangerous. That's what forced them to actually say it was too dangerous, because they had to actually, they were just saying you couldn't be there and not giving a reason. Then they were pushed. It's either it's too dangerous or you don't want us there because we're going to interfere with your cleanup. And if that's the reason you should work around us and us not work around you, then they had to come out and say it's too dangerous.
That's right.
So if when I see they don't offer you anything until they're pushed to offer you an answer. Is that what you've seen at a lot of these other
Yeah, exactly. They got to be pushed.
contamination
Yeah.
events?
Yeah. The voices, I mean, the community, the most important thing is to stay united and keep voices loud and often.
Well, I think, and I'm just being here a short time and whatever, I think you can see that Rockdale as a community right now is pretty united about this issue. And just people have had enough of what we feel is being manipulated by local government. And we look at this as just one more thing that local government is manipulating us over, right?
Exactly. Be very careful, because the public relations firm no matter who they are, their job is to, put trolls into social media, start dividing people, and they will use elected officials to try to divide you too.
We were, I was going to do a show last week, and I put up on Facebook first, we're going to discuss the aftermath of BioLab after the first week. And within an hour, that post was taken down and said that I was trying uh, uh, to acquire sensitive information. They took it down, and Facebook banned it. Then I put another post up that said I was going to discuss the chemical fire, and within 2 hours, that was taken down, Scott, and said again I violated policy. Somebody protested it, right? So then I just put up a generic thing. Join the show. We'll talk about current affairs and events that occurred. So
That's the way to do it. And by the way, in East Palestine, we have the EPA trying to censor us with Facebook. We have documents. So one of the other things too is, Twitter, or now X. I cross post on X too. I haven't seen Facebook censoring anything that I've been doing in Conyers at this time, but for those of you, you might want to follow me on. I try to keep everybody updated, and I post the exact same thing on Facebook that I post on X. So the viewers might want to get over on X just in case we see censorship on Facebook.
Well, since I complained about it, I've not seen it.
Good.
Right. So since I put it out there that it was happening, it's not happened again. And I think the way you have to do that is you have to expose it. You have to expose that someone is trying to silence you, and then when they know that you're on to them, they'll a lot of times back off. Scott, I mean, I just think that when we come forward and let people know what's going on and when we're truthful and people have a source that they can trust, then they'll rely on that source. And but people have been manipulated so much by local government here in this area. They do, even if they were telling us the truth, people would be suspicious of it.
Yep.
And that's what I think, what you've said, and and people have to be suspicious of the lawyers just dropping in here, just parachuting in to save the day. And and we have to realize we need to stick together as a community, and we need to say what's best for our community, and we need to tell our politicians this is what's best for us, and you need to listen to us.
Yep.
Scott, we've been on a little over an hour, and I don't mind going over because it's sort of my show, and we don't pay anybody. And I do pay somebody, the streaming service, but it's my show, and and we're not really dictated to an hour. But I felt this was something that no matter what it took, we need to take the time that it took to be able to get this story out there.
Absolutely.
So what I want to do is I'm going to give you an opportunity. You tell the people any last comments you have, any last advice, and then we'll be looking forward to you coming back in a few weeks and giving us an update.
Yeah, well, anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out on Facebook. And this is, when I got on the ground, I realized this is much bigger than I thought it would be. And I'm trying to gather more resources to do the best I can. And I'm sorry, I try to get back to everybody in a timely manner. I may not be able to, but I'm not going away. I'll be coming back. And Larry, the minute I know something, I'll obviously keep you in the loop, and we can come back and do another show.
That's great. And guys, what I like to see is when things like this happen, people of kindred spirits always connect, right? So you'll have people who fight for you, the citizens. We all navigate to each other, and we all end up finding each other because we're all truth seekers, and we find a way to find each other. And I was great to be connected with Scott, to bring him on the show, and to bring to my friends and my neighbors and my community who I want to fight for now and in the future. So I want to thank everybody for watching the show. Scott, why don't you tell them the pages that they can go look at? Because they asked about that just now.
Yeah, on X, you can reach me. And unfortunately, I got the name Scott Smith, so there's a lot of Scott Smiths. But if you go into, I think it's Stand Against Biolab on that page, you'll see my post. That's best go into that public group, find one of my posts, link on it, send me a friend request. And if you go on, formerly Twitter or X, my handle is at Water Warrior 1, and that's spelled ONE. And water, just like it sounds, the word warrior, and then 1 ONE. So, and if they can't find me on Facebook, they can just, if they find you, you'll see my posting with you. And just click on the link. That's the easiest way to find me.
Yep. And guys, and Scott, Scott's been very knowledgeable, reached out, had a great connection and conversation with Scott. He's a valuable resource, and I'm just so grateful that somebody like Scott came to Rockdale County when this happened, so that we can have independent testing and a third party that is going to give you the truth of what you're dealing with and facing here in Rockdale County and Conyers, Georgia.
Yeah. And I'll end with this, Larry. Some people say, why do I do this? And it's my own experience and what I overcame, and helping people not have to go through what I went through. But also, when you start thinking about your children and your grandchildren, they're not going to remember by how much money you had or didn't have. And this country is so messed up. I'm an optimist, because what I've seen in East Palestine and Conyers and on the ground, I see great people from all walks of life coming together. And some things are more important, especially in the country we live in. I believe we can bring people together. And if there's anything positive out of this, is we're bringing thousands of people together. And I want to bring millions of people together to change the system, because the system is broken and corrupt. And it's going to take all these great people that I've met, from East Palestine to Conyers to all these other 60 disasters. So don't give up hope, because remember, the government still works for all of us. We need to take our country back.
And we are and we become kindred spirits, because when we have something that unites us and brings us together, we can't be defeated.
Absolutely.
And you've got, everyone needs to realize this: the government is there to help you. If government doesn't help people, there's no need for government. If your government officials aren't there to represent you and represent the needs of the community, then you've elected the wrong government officials. And you know, Rockdale County, we just went through an election where we didn't feel government officials were representing us. So we changed long-time government officials, and we're putting new people in office that take office in January. And then we're going to look at these new people. And I'm one of those new people, because yes, you elected me to the school board because you wanted change. You wanted a new direction. I ran a campaign and promised those things. And if I'm anything, I'm a person of my word. The things I campaigned on are the things I intend to do. And the other people who ran for the other offices, you need to watch us. If we don't do what we say we're going to do, then when the next time we're on the ballot, you fire us. You fire me and you fire the other people. But not only that, you've got the opportunity to fire anyone who works for you. And that's what the ballot box is. The ballot box says, I want this person to work for me or not. And it's your choice who works for you. So use your right to vote and vote. Vote, vote, vote. Guys, I am going to say thank you, each and every one. Scott, just hang on after we click
Okay.
off, and you and I will be in the
Okay.
green room. But guys, thank you for joining the show. This has
Thank
been
you for having me.
You're welcome, Scott. I am so grateful for this audience. Again, share and like this show, guys. Hit the share button, like this. Let's let this show go out to the masses so that everybody can know what's going on in Rockdale County and we're not forgotten. None of us in this county like the response or lack of response from our state agencies. We've not heard one word from the governor of Georgia. We've not heard anything from high-ranking state officials. And this was a emergency. This was a contamination event that may go down as one of the biggest contamination events in American history. And you have not had the governor of this state mention it or say anything about it. I would love to see presidential candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, come to Conyers, Georgia, because this is an important enough event to draw your attention. So if anybody for their campaigns is watching this right now, reach out to me, Larry Cox. Let's arrange you guys coming to Conyers, Georgia, and give us some of your attention and bring national attention to Conyers, Georgia, so that this kind of thing doesn't happen in your community. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week